stories turn songs into symphonies, events into memories, and lives into legends. In our crowded world, knowing your story cuts through the noise so you can make your mark, whether you want to sell more books, increase profits, or just make a difference. At Sterling & Stone, story is our business. The Story Studio podcast is where we explore ways we can all tell our stories better. And now, with the Story Studio podcast number 10, here's Johnny, Shawn, and Dave.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Story Studio podcast. Today we're going to talk about why you can't be the hero of your own story all the time, basically. This is sort of a self-awareness episode, I would say, because we do tend to get in our own ways. And when I say we, I don't mean just all of us. I mean specifically the three of us on this show, which we're going to talk about a little bit. There are tendencies that all of us can get into because, I mean, if I could draw a parallel here, you know, a good piece of writing advice for a character is to understand that the character is the center of their own world, and they're, you know, like your worst characters, your serial killer thinks that he's doing the right things, essentially, or something like that. It makes sense to him. But backing up, we as people, that applies too. Like we do tend, right or wrong, to have a myopic viewpoint and just operate within our own frame. And if you want to get the most out of what you're doing, either in your business or in your stories, you need to understand that that you are not the end-all be-all and that there are worlds outside of you. So we're going to talk about some personal failings. This will be a fun one.
Well, but it is, and I think that the biggest mistakes that we made, and you know, obviously, this is a recurring theme, not just with us, but you know. I think with our very audience, I think you guys have embraced that mistakes are building blocks to a much better place. And it's hard to look in the mirror sometimes, but once you really figure out where you're messing up and where you can do better, even the big mistakes end up being, you know, boons to your creativity or to your path in some way.
Do you remember when Dave used to yell at us because he was tweeting the show and we weren't allowed to go to him? It was like there was a fence around him.
I do. Dave, are you all tweeted out?
Yeah, I'm all tweeted out.
I think it may be like more than a full year since I've been on Twitter.
Yeah, I think so too. I just have that account. And I wrote in write, publish, repeat that's the one thing I check. So if you want to get in touch with me, you can get in touch with me through Twitter. So there's probably all these people like, you know.
Yeah, I should look into that.
Yeah, I'm just not down. What was that?
It'll tell you got like 10 notifications, but like 9 of them have nothing to do with you. And you don't even, it's just people updating.
Yeah, I can't deal with that in my email. Like I don't want to Facebook, Twitter, and like emails. Like I'm
not into social media. I'm just not social. We'll talk about that today.
I'm into social media, but it's like a tiny little Slack group. Like that's social media.
That's not social media. That's your own little group. It's very different.
But it's not that I'm antisocial. It's just that I'm social, and I'm a little antisocial sometimes during the workday.
Me too. I don't really like a crowd. I like an intimate gathering.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, none of us true extroverts, which is actually kind of interesting. That's a show for another time. Like we're all kind of. Well, Dave, I would say is an introvert, but Shawn and I are ambiverts. We're just as.
You know what? I actually think that would be a good show. Not right now, but that's a good one to put on the list.
What specifically? Introversion and extroversion?
Well, no, I don't think it's a versus. I think it's a knowing who you are and really figuring that out. Not even just where you are, but where on the scale you are, because I think that can influence the way that you behave, the things that you engage in, and not just the things that you engage in, but how you do it once you're there. I know that once I read Quiet, which is a book by Suzanne Cain. For those of you who haven't read it, it's really, really amazing. It helped me to understand myself in a way that I didn't understand before. And it's helped me to interact. So when I've gone to events post reading that book, I've had a slightly different outlook. And I think I've gotten a lot more out of myself. And for other people, I've been able to give more of myself because I just understand. So I think a lot of people, a lot of creatives are one or the other, but they don't necessarily know where they are on that balance or how to kind of exploit what they are to get more out of what they want.
Yeah, I would say that knowing yourself, well, for everybody but Dave, I would say knowing yourself better is probably a good thing. But Dave's got some heinous shit buried in there.
It's all
buried. I put it out in the open.
Put it out in the open. But I mean, that's what this show is about. That's a good transition, actually, that this really is about knowing yourself. I actually feel like that's one of my strengths. I may have plenty of flaws, but I think that I'm pretty good at noticing them once. Sometimes they have to be pointed out. But once you can be honest and look at yourself, you're going to do better. You're going to correct things that aren't quite right. You're going to accentuate things that are right. You're going to choose activities and strategies based on things that suit your strength rather than what you feel you quote unquote should do.
Well, there's two sides of this too. You have to be willing to hear and then apply. And not everybody is willing to do that. There's a lot of people who will hear constructive criticism and not take it as constructive and only hear the criticism. And then it's lost on them. They've just been given a tool, and instead of doing something with it, they just go fallow. And that's a shame. It's like sometimes when I'm talking to Ethan or Haley and I'm trying to, teach them something, I don't want to get mad at them if they did something wrong. I really want to identify what the problem is and fix it for the future. And there are times when I know they're getting it and I can see it. I can see it in their body language. I can see it in their eyes. I can hear it in the vocabulary. And I know, okay, well, the next time that they are faced with this problem, they're going to handle it differently. And I have solace as a father that I can walk away and I know that, okay, we're on a good path. And then there are other times when I know they're waiting for me to stop talking. And
but isn't that like a lot of people in your life, Shawn?
No, yes.
How do you even know anymore?
I'm saying this as Ethan and Haley, but
it's me right now.
Everyone, right? This applies to everyone. It's Cindy every day. But I mean, we've all seen that, right? Where sometimes you're talking to somebody and they get it. So very recently, like I've had conversations with Dave for years, and I know that he's just listening to me and just waiting for me to stop talking. But we had a conversation recently where I knew he was listening. And he's proved ever since, the month that's passed that he was listening. And that's the thing, like Johnny said it too, Johnny's not always the easiest person to bring something up to because he's so intense. But I have faith as his partner that once I do, we're good. Like he's going to start working on that immediately because he doesn't want to hear it. I think Dave. No,
I hate hearing it, but I tend to always apply it.
I think Dave's a little more of a masochist. Dave actually wants to hear it.
Tell me what I did.
Yeah, wrong. I remember that conversation, and there was no question that Dave was listening. It was frightening.
Yeah. So Dave wants to hear it, but doesn't necessarily want to apply. It really is the flip side. Johnny wants to hear it or doesn't want to hear it.
Do you want to team up, Dave?
At any point during that conversation that we had, did you think Dave is remembering all of this so he can murder us both?
Well, I was actually because you were very intense. Dave listens very intensely. Everybody, it's all eye contact like the whole time, and I was like, he's either really getting it or there's a flash of murder coming. Where just all at once, he's got a knife under the table.
Did you expect him to just reach across the table and smash my big giant nose onto it?
No warning at all. It's like one of those scenes in a movie. It's like
I was just going to be covered in guacamole like 1 second later. And I tend to be a little masochistic where I do want to know, and I always want to fix it, whatever it is. So I think that there is that balance, between us, and we as a culture, we really want to move forward. And especially this year, I think more than ever, we've always tried to be an open culture. And we've always said that communication is really important and all of that stuff. But I think this year we have leapt into that and we're really reinforcing it with each other. We're holding each other accountable. We're holding everyone in the company accountable. Look, if you don't, because we can tell, we can tell sometimes we're at the edge. And don't hold back. You need to say what you need to say so that we can get to the other side, because the sooner that we can fix things in ourselves, we fix them for the whole company. And that's the key. When you're in a collaborative relationship, and again, if it doesn't matter if you're a solopreneur, a solo author, anything, you're still collaborating out there in this world if you're making things.
You're collaborating in personal relationships. You're collaborating with a boss.
Yes. And so, but because that is the core that we use to frame everything, it makes a really big difference in how, in our approach. And so, yeah.
Well, this is a journey that's it's ongoing because there's a lot of nuance, and I don't know how much detail we want to get into. But I do tend to get defensive, but I actually just was talking to Shawn about there are different ways that you can bring shit up to me and I will respond differently. So knowing those things about yourself, that's all very useful. It allows you to use the right carrot and stick with yourself. A lot of people, just to use a really simple example, like I'm going to start exercising. And so they'll choose a punishment or a reward that they've seen other people use, or they've read about it in a magazine article or something. And it's not right for them. It's different. It doesn't work with them. They're maybe trying to do things at the wrong time for their energy levels or cycles. They're, the reward isn't aligned, something like that. So just knowing the nuances and kind of the submodalities of these things rather than just the big picture matters a lot too.
Well, it's like if you hear somebody say, oh, I wake up at 5 a.m. every morning and I just start writing and I get 5,000 words in a day. Well, okay, it's pretty easy to say. It's for somebody else to think, I'm going to get up at 5 a.m. every morning and I'm going to get my 5,000 words too. But you're a different human. You have a different life. You have different ambitions and you have different, like your own human personal culture code is different. And
right.
So you can't expect to just adopt somebody else's. That's like you see these companies, they have their value mission statements or something. And so they say our company needs a mission statement. Go to Google and find a company mission statement, right? So the HubSpot mission statement and copy it and change it for their company. That's not how you do it. You really need to go internally. So who wants to go first here? Like, what's the best way to lead this conversation?
Well, I mean, I guess I can go first. So, one of the ones, this really is part me, but it's also just kind of globally, like it's kind of between, it's the company as a whole. And then even between those two, my working relationship with Shawn in running the company or any other thing that we're doing together is just sort of understanding that, well, okay, I'll just tell the story. So basically we used to operate as if we were basically the same person. And I think that's because, and this is going to sound like a joke, but it's not, we had Dave as a contrast, and Dave said no to everything. And like the joke was that I would do all the stuff in writing that Dave wouldn't, like genre hopping and writing about unicorns and let's go fast at the beginning. So it was real easy to think, okay, well, so if Dave doesn't want to do those things and Johnny and Shawn do want to do those things in the limited way that we were looking, it was easy to assume that Johnny and Shawn were basically the same person.
Yeah, we were looking at it as binary instead of a scale.
And in reality, on just a lot of things that we've kind of measured informally, I'm kind of in the middle of these two guys. Like Dave is typically on one end on one issue, and Shawn is typically on the other end on that same issue. And a lot of times I'm right in between. And so treating me as like the enthusiastic one, because we were comparing to Shawn, who does tend to be enthusiastic, led us into some pitfalls along the way. We structured podcasts and projects and instruction that we were doing around the idea that, in part, like just narrowing down on me, that I was going to be enthusiastic and outgoing and positive. And I think I am positive, and I think I am optimistic, and I think I'm enthusiastic about the right things, but I'm not Shawn. And recognizing that has made a big difference. Like we would have structured things differently if we understood that I am a little more intense. I do work a little better kind of putting my nose to the grindstone and doing the work rather than being a cheerleader, for want of a better term. That's not really right.
Well, no, like, okay, I have a specific example. So we did our apprentice program like a couple of years ago now. And that was framed out as, Johnny and I would show up and lead the classes and be the teachers and all of that. And I like that stuff. It's a little weird when you got a whole class and everyone's staring at you and no one's talking. That part of it is weird, but the actual like communication and that's very native for me. The thing that Johnny is really strong at is structure and motivation. And there's basically, if we were to architect that project today instead of 2 years ago, it would be different. we know each other much better. We know our company much better. We know we know the value add that we can provide much better. And so we would have been able to break that apart and put Dave in the best possible place, put Johnny in the best possible place, and to put me in the best possible place. And instead, the way it used to be is we were a little more watered down. We would put the three of us as the three of us in one place. And that doesn't really make sense because we all have substantially different superpowers that we can, provide to any community. And so why were we watering that down? Well, we were doing it because we hadn't figured this out yet.
Well, and we can help different kinds of people too. So there's somebody that that I'm working with through Stories to Go who really, I mean, at least if I'm believing her, likes me as a coach. And I think it's because we're kind of similar. Like, I think that we have similar kind of intense personalities. And so that does work. Whereas I think other people have, like, I've gotten people are like, I don't know, like they think that I'm too intense. I creep them out because I really kind of am just do the fucking work. And I actually really like teaching on a mass level if it's broadcast only. Like, I like speaking. I like the idea of teaching a class where I would be like at the front of the room, figuratively or literally. The small group sort of things with a varying group of people who are different types, that's not my sweet spot. I'm not that good. We've also done hot seats, and Shawn is like this. He's like Johnny on the spot, ironically, able to come up with stuff kind of out of the blue. And we've actually seen this in our communication. Like, I think before I speak in a lot of cases, I really want to figure out all the little pieces before I give an answer. And it's frustrated Shawn when we've had meetings and stuff, because I think he wants me to give an immediate like yay in some cases, but I'm like, I got to think about it. But that stops me in hot seats because I'm useless. I just sit there and I'm like, well, I can't come up with stuff to help you right here, right now. Now, if I think about it for a long time and create a plan, okay, then I can help you, but not on the spot. But we know those things.
That's a good example of something we had to change. So we used to do hot seats, and we realized that we're putting us both in a situation where we both cannot thrive. So why are we doing that? Let's change the structure of that. And I don't think you can get there until you recognize that, oh, like I'm not. It's not that you're not good at that, you meaning generally, right? Anytime you identify, I'm not, because it's really easy to not feel successful. Okay, so this is a slightly sideways example, but I'm editing one of our writers' work right now. And I was noticing that parts of it were taking me a long, long time to get through versus other parts. And so I'm really studying this. I'm trying to figure out what the difference between these two kinds of copy is. And it was because there's a part where it's more of a fantastical world and part where it's more of a real world. And the real world, the author was very confident. And the other world, not so much. There was a lot more hesitation in the writing. And that's makes sense. Okay, well, maybe this person isn't designed to write in these fantastical worlds, and maybe we didn't do enough to give the tools for this is what the world should feel like and breathe like. And if we took the time to set up that success, to find out what is this writer's sweet spot, are they going to be able to write in this world or not? That's on us. And when you're in a collaborative relationship, it's the same thing. You want to ask yourself what you're good at, what your partners are good at, what everybody in the room is good at, and then you can put the best possible, collaborative team together. And again, even if that's just your team of outsourcers.
I have a real good on the ground in the trenches example of where this applies for, say, your average person who doesn't work with other writers and that sort of thing is social media is an example. We've actually seen discussions in the Stone Table. I backed away from social media in one particular area, and a lot of people
almost
were like,
violently so.
Yeah, a lot of people, but they were kind of like there was a mixed reaction in the Stone Table, and people were like, "Wow, can you explain that? Because that seems dangerous." And almost a hint of possibility for people who don't like it. And they were like, "Oh, wait a minute. You mean I cannot do that? I can choose to not do social media?" Some people do social media brilliantly. We know plenty of people who really do great on Facebook. And I don't mean with ads and stuff necessarily, but just interacting. Like a lot of romance authors who really build great tribes. They can interact on Facebook and sell stuff in a group. I hate that stuff. And I think a lot of people are doing it because they saw someone else do it and they feel they need to do it. And when I, in our mastermind group, said that I am not going to do that, there was a sense of, oh, wait, you mean I can stop doing that shit that I hate and that I'm probably not very good at anyway? That's the sort of thing.
Yeah, and it's really easy to default. And for a while, Johnny would agree with me and do things that he shouldn't be doing or that I shouldn't have put him in the position to do. And figuring that out now, like we're much more in sync and being able to say, okay, well, that's not the best part of that job, and moving out, like getting out of areas. HR is another one. By nature of our org chart lately, Johnny has been in a position that he's not really that suited for. And
Johnny and Johnny's wife, who both of us are not good with people who, like on a mass scale, we're good with our friends. We're good with people that we have rapport with. We're not good in general with people. And that's a mistake.
Right. If you have like HR, it shouldn't have the word intense anywhere near it. Right. It's a different function. But as we're growing up, we're having to see what our limitations are, because that's going to help. I mean, mine is easy. I have many, but we'll jump to just one of mine, which is focus. For a very long time, I was not focused on the company. No, I was always focused.
I want to hear from Dave about your focus. I feel like this is a good time to hear from Dave some good old Shawns stories.
Okay, Dave, what's the most wildly unfocused story you have?
Oh, I can't remember individual stories. It's just there's always another idea. You are the golden retriever chasing squirrels. And I, especially early on, you're a lot more disciplined now, but early on when we were like doing freelance work, or even when we were first writing, it was like, okay, we're going to do this. We're going to do this story and this story. And then I like to know, where the train's going, and I start laying the tracks, and, I'm in that direction. All of a sudden you're like, wait, no, we're going to do this thing. I got this great idea. There's no way it could fail.
Yeah, I've heard that before.
I will say that that's accurate, or it was accurate. I definitely chased squirrels for a long time. I don't think I've chased a squirrel in a long time, because I don't see them as, they're not squirrels anymore. They're what's the right analogy, Johnny?
The analogy is that you used to chase squirrels out on the streets everywhere, and you'd get hit by cars, but
you
now
what we've out in your slippers.
Now what we've done is we've taken all the squirrels and we put them inside our company corral, and we just let you loose in there, and you chase the squirrels within the context of the corral.
Okay, well then that's fair. Then I still chase squirrels, but they are all eventually running back up a Sterling and Stone tree. That's the point.
They're all Sterling and Stone branded squirrels at this point.
Ooh, can we do that? Can we get like a special strain of squirrel DNA and make our own?
I really want to do that.
Big noses.
They should be roosters, actually.
They can't run because they just keep going down in the ground. It's too heavy.
So I think for a long time it was. Part of it was that I do like the idea. Part of it was the thrill of the hunt, for sure. There is, something beautiful in a new unrealized idea, and, getting other people excited about that idea is always fun. But I think that the big test is how much we backed off from that. And even there's been some really big ideas that have orbited the company that we have walked away from. Or even not separate ideas, but big opportunities that are, yes, that's a big opportunity, but it's too big of an opportunity cost for what we're trying to build at Sterling and Stone on a foundational level. And putting that first 100% of the time now has been essential, and really just deciding that our hedgehog concept and things like essentialism can't just be fun words that we bat around and ideas that we pay lip service to. They have to be real, and we have to pledge allegiance to those things. And so,
yeah, you should have one thing that you stand for. I mean, we can all stand for many things, but Even Realm and Sands. So the imprint that Shawn and I write under, Realm and Sands, if you look through Platt and Truant books, they're all over the map. I don't know how much we've talked about this on the Story Studio podcast. We talked a lot on Self-Publishing podcast. We've done just about any genre you can imagine, and without doing them under pen names in most cases. We did have a romance pen name. We do have a romance pen name, but everything else we just stuck under. We did Western and fantasy and steampunk and sci-fi of many different sorts and literary. And so it's hard to say that we stood for one thing until we stopped and we said, no, we do. We're basically asking big questions. We're exploring big concepts, and we kind of coined the term inquisitive fiction, and meaning that, fiction that is, surprise, inquisitive, it's deep. But then comparing ourselves to some filmmakers and TV people. So Michael Crichton, or I guess authors as well, Michael Crichton meets Christopher Nolan is kind of what we say. And then we added Alex, what's his name?
Garland.
Alex Garland. But when you have that picture, then you can say, no, that really is what our books are about. We as authors are about that core concept, and anything that's outside of that, we really shouldn't be doing. Sterling and Stone in general, we're about story. We make stories and smarter artists, and then the smarter artists then make stories. So really we're about story. And if a concept comes to us and it looks like a great idea, it used to be that Shawn would get excited by the possibility, by the idea itself. And what we do now is, well, is it about story? No? Okay, well then we shouldn't do it.
Yeah, it has to work. Not only one thing that we've been really allegiant to, I don't know, for several months now, is using the whole animal. So it's not just, does it work for the company? Does it work for every part of the company? It can't work for one part of the company and then negatively influence another part of the company, or work for one of us and not work for all of us. Ideas really need to be substantial if we're going to introduce them into our ecosystem at this point. And that took a lot of learning. It sounds really simple. Oh, focus, but it's going against my DNA. That's the thing. I really like to be all over the place. So the idea isn't to not be me. It's to figure out ways to be me within those parameters. So that's what all of these are. It's not changing who you are. It's changing your direction. So for Johnny, we're not trying to change who Johnny is. Johnny's not going to be less intense, but acknowledging that he has an intensity and a desire to do certain things. Another thing with Johnny is it's really important that things are his idea. That didn't count quite right. But I mean, if well, Johnny, you help me explain this.
No, he's not a fat vampire.
Yeah.
No, it's very true. And those of you who have kids probably have seen this. So I'm basically like a child.
That's okay. Dave eats like a child.
Right. He does. He's all about his mac and cheese.
I don't eat children. What?
Is that if
now that you're on a diet,
if I want, if there's something that I need to do, if it's assigned to me, I'm not nearly as receptive as if I come around to it on my own, even if it's the exact same thing. So an example is we haven't really done the really fleshed out our website yet with articles and everything. But for the longest time, Shawn was trying to get me to write epic blog posts or whatever, to really, get content out there in my style. And I'm like, oh man, I don't want to do that. But if I come around to kind of growing the brand and stuff, then I find myself starting to think, I'll bet I could write some stuff. I'll bet I could really get some attention. And that's the sort of thing. It's the exact same idea, but it needs to come from me, basically, from within.
Yeah, and knowing that's fine. That means that sometimes it's just it's a longer strategy. It's okay. Well, I don't, because before it was blunt force. So
yeah, but dude, you could, now that we both know this, we don't need to play that game. What could happen is together we could work toward reframing it in such a way that it feels.
But yeah, that's good. Exactly what I'm saying. Where before it was more like my blunt force enthusiasm would maybe nudge the needle for you. And then it didn't work out the way it should, because that's not the way to get it. That's not the way to get to the finish line.
Everybody has their triggers, their walls, their preferences, their defenses. And knowing those languages, knowing how to speak somebody else's language is basically what we're talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. Dave, do you wanna take your turn?
Can you frame mine? And then I'll get into it.
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
So
I already framed yours. It's hanging up on my wall right now.
Yeah. So Dave told this story in writing, beautifully so, I would say, for one of his creative updates for the table. It was just about like, I forget. Do you remember your headline off the top of your head, Dave?
No, I'll look.
Well, yeah. So we went to dinner after the summit, and Johnny and Dave were not suspecting an ambush at all. They thought we were just going to have turkey burgers at Jack Allen's.
By the way, ambushing me and building a case, that's the worst way to get my attention.
Yeah, it totally is. But Dave, I feel that Dave has more potential, or at least as much potential, in very specific ways than anyone I know. And it's just not been realized. And the thing that hurts me the most about working with Dave lately, not lately meaning the last month, lately meaning a year before the last month, is that, he just had so much raw potential. And when I've been working with Dave for 10 years now. I mean, this is our 2008 is when we met. It's 2018. Aww. Right. So this is our 10. And I met Dave. I mean, most of you listening to this probably know this, but I met Dave like 90 minutes into going online. So my stupid internet anniversary is July 17th. And I met Dave in July. So, we've been together for a long time, and I've seen all sides of Dave.
Warning story. You know, somebody avoids the internet. They go on the internet and immediately they meet a big bear. It's like Dave's worry about the cookies.
He was after my cookies, and he got my cookies. And so I saw a lot of fire in Dave 10 years ago that I wasn't even seeing a year ago. And I felt like he was not appreciative of the successes that he was having and doing enough to grab the next rung. And a full year ago, when he was down here in Austin, I was feeling very optimistic. He was going to go back. He's going to get his shit together. He's going to change. And a year had passed, and not only had none of those things happened, but I really felt like he was almost aggressively sliding backwards. And I really needed to. I love Dave deeply, and I just didn't want that. This was our chance. We were sitting at dinner. I didn't want to have this conversation over the phone or on Zoom, or it deserved face to face. And so we had a conversation. Is that the framing you're looking for?
Yeah. The post that it was 2 paths and brutal honesty. And it says, sometimes the best thing a friend can do is punch you in the gut.
I wasn't trying to punch you in the gut, for the record.
I'll punch him in the gut for you, Dave, if you want.
It's like, I think I have a pretty good self-awareness, but at the same time, some areas I don't. And I think for a long time, I'm trying to think. Should I tell the Todds story or no? I don't know if that makes sense.
Well, I mean, dude, that's the thing. This is your story. I think tell the most honest version that you can. What you're feeling, because I mean, just to give a spoiler on this story, you guys, it's been a month, and I have not seen Dave better than this in years. And it's not like a flash in the pan. It's not like Austin Dave when he left a year ago. I'm seeing it in his work. I'm seeing it in Slack communications. I'm seeing it in his face right now. I'm seeing it in every story meeting. There's been a dramatic shift with Dave that feels very real and feels very tangible. And that's really good for him and for me and for the company. And see, that's the thing. We're so symbiotic right now, not just the three of us, but every thread within the company, that if we don't pull those threads tight, then the weave is too loose. And when I change something for myself and I improve myself, I am specifically improving the lives of Dave and Johnny and the rest of the company. And that, for all of us, when Johnny makes an improvement, it goes all the way down. And when Dave makes an improvement, it goes all the way down. The problem is Dave has not really seen himself as that substantial to the company before. And so he doesn't realize how much his behavior does affect me and Johnny and everybody else. And so your success is our success.
So basically, when I was growing up, I had a best friend named Todd, and he initially, he and I did not get along. And it seems like the people that I am closest to, I didn't initially like. It's one of those weird things, but we were best of friends, and he was like the first person that I think really believed in that I would be a writer someday, and not just a writer. He said, you know, you'll be like Stephen King great. And that meant a lot to me. And what happened was, when we were growing up, I was sort of the person that had their shit together more than him. He had like bad family situation, and I was like always helping him. And what happened was, he went into the Navy. He moved to Virginia, and a few years went by. Every time we saw each other, like, he'd come and visit every now and then, and it was just like old times. But in 1996, I think it was February, he came to visit me, and this time it wasn't like old times. This time he was like really in my face, and he was saying, dude, you got to get the hell out of here. You got to get out of Florida. I mean, you are just wasting your life away. And at the time, I saw him as this person that went on to do awesome things, and he was looking down on me, and it annoyed me. And it was like it was a change in dynamic in our friendship that I was never jealous of the success he had. I wanted him to do well. I loved him. But at the same time, I didn't want him to like look down on me in that way. And he was really trying to push me to get my shit together and move up there with him. He said he'd get me a job. I mean, like everything, he was basically helping me do what I needed to do to get my shit together. And I rejected him. I took offense to what he said. And what happened was, I was so pissed that we ended on a bad note. Like I didn't walk him down to leave or anything. I was just very pissed off. And that was in February, and I didn't talk to him after that for a few months go by. And I wasn't truly worried about it because he was my best friend, and I figured eventually, you know, we'll talk again. Everything will be square, and, you know, I'll go up there. I'll move to Virginia. I'll get my shit together. I just need more time. I need more time. And then on April 2nd, I get a phone call that he died in a car accident. And that pretty much just destroyed me right there. And that is something that I've lived with for a long time in a lot of different ways. And I think it's kind of fucked in my head a little bit. In one area, like, I don't know, I'm afraid of some areas of success. Another area, like, I just feel that it won't happen. But whatever the case, I always get in my own head, and I see all these things that I cannot do. Or like, if I try to do something, it won't work. And I'm just very, you know, negative sort of thing, despite whatever successes I have. I mean, we've had some great successes with our stories. And I mean, I've probably done better than I had any right to do. Yet at the same time, there's this other part of me that just like holds.
It'll never happen again. I'm like, yesterday's gone is done. Right. And yeah, I've seen Dave sabotage himself over and over and over. So we'll come up with a strategy, and we'll get, maybe if we're lucky, 60, 70% of that strategy is hit. And then you can't do 70% of a strategy and have it work. It's almost, in some ways, it's worse than doing 0% in some ways. And so, you know, things break, and then it's broken him, it's broken his confidence, and it's a lot of self-sabotage. And what I'm seeing now is the opposite. I mean, dude, you don't even probably realize that the little things that you're doing, they have a butterfly effect through the company. Right now, this week, Dave's just been giving us notes on outlines that are circulating through the company. And that's all it is. Just read this outline and give us some Dave style notes. And they could be one note, but if that one note improves our, you know, that story by 2%, that 2% could really, really matter. And so anyway, I think for all of us, this is all about finding out not just the story that you're telling yourself. What limitations are keeping you from really making everybody else around you more successful?
But to tie back the Todds story, so when I was in Austin for the summit, it was a similar situation with Shawn, Johnny, and I, where Shawn basically said, dude, this is the deal. And, you are not living up to your potential. And I had that moment where, like, in my mind, like, there's a part of me that was pissed off because I'm thinking of all the stuff that I do. And I'm thinking of all the stuff that probably, not that Shawn doesn't appreciate what I do. I think he does. But I think I'm thinking one way and I'm not seeing the entire.
Well, it's hard when you're in a corner like that. Yeah. You don't see, like, I mean, really, I have to hand it to you for how clearly you did see in that moment.
Well, and I thought back to that moment when, I was saying goodbye to Todd, and I was like, well, this can go one of two ways. And I've already been down that other road, and I don't ever want to see myself sabotage a friendship in such a way, because you never know how much time you have left. And the fact that you believe in me, that Johnny believes in me, that Todd had believed in me, those things should mean more to me and should wake me up to the shit that I'm not doing. So getting my life together and getting healthy and stuff.
Yeah. And just to put a finer point on that exchange, because it wasn't easy. Like, this was not, again, this was our celebration dinner.
Serious fucking ass.
Yeah. Thanks.
Right. So this is our celebration. We could just change the title. But it also had to be framed in a way where I wanted Dave to make a decision. So we don't need to get into the details of this at all, but it was basically like, okay, Dave, we have been having the same conversation for years now. It's time to make a decision. You can do X or you can do Y. And it was binary at that point, because a lot of times it hasn't been. It's like I try to be really supportive with Dave. And the way I have done that in the past is just to, like, put Band-Aids on things as fast as I could, or figure out ways. And I thought, like, I'm enabling the situation. I have to stop. I have to put more of the decision onto Dave. And here's a yes or no, black or white, X or Y situation. And for anybody listening to this, I think that's where you need to get, even if it's to yourself, because I can guarantee nobody is perfect. Everybody listening to this has something that they could fix, a story that they're telling themselves that isn't quite right. And if they fix that story, their lives will become immediately better, and so will the people who orbit around them.
Yeah, basically you're not fooling anybody except yourself. Nobody's perfect. That's why we came up with the idea of calling this, why you can't be the hero of your own story. Because if you're blind and you figure you're doing everything perfectly, yes, I have the right work ethic. Yes, I only do the things that are in my superpower. I'm all this stuff. If you're wrong, then it's only you who you're fooling. So
yeah, and if you're outsourcing, or collaborating or whatever, and you surround yourself with people who tell you yes, you're not growing. You're not growing. If you like it for people to just agree with you, you're not growing.
Right. So anyway, so on the next episode, we're going to talk about a similar sort of visibility issue, I would say, something where you have to take an honest look. Like, this was about taking an honest look at yourself, but on a project basis. So basically knowing, there are sometimes when a project just isn't going to work, be it a book or anything else, or a marketing campaign, or just about anything that you're doing, where you kind of have to know whether it's worth.
Blog. How many blogs have you had to put a bullet in their head, right?
Well, it's at least thousands from Dave's perspective.
Yeah, me alone.
Right. So, you need to know, like, we're going to talk about how to know when you should scrap or shelve a project or start
like
it over.
9 podcasts.
Or like 9 podcasts. So that's what we're going to talk about in the next episode. And thank you all for listening.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Story Studio Podcast. Are you wondering what the ever-growing demand for superb storytelling skills means for your future? Check out our latest interview as Johnny and Shawn dive deep into that question in Storytelling is the Future, How to Build on Your Self-Publishing Success. Download the interview from the info box or show notes in YouTube, or head over to sterlingandstone.net/future.